you're like, oh, are we friends or are we rivals? Because we do something fairly similar.
But you were like, no, we're best friends.
We're best friends.
Hi everyone, you're listening to Scaling DevTools. You have two guests this week. You have Paul from ittybit, and you kind of have me as well, because we're going to be talking about how Paul just bought my project/startup StreamPot. People kept on signing up, paying for it. We got onto like front page on Hacker News, and I started to get all these messages like it was like not really working. What I was expecting that relationship was going to be was different to what he was expecting.
It is like again and again and again. It's shocking like how often edge cases crop up as soon as you add any kind of scale. And we would have some late night phone calls like almost like commiserating over.
Yeah, we did actually.
Like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, so I last 2 years ago, I was trying to build a podcast clipping tool, and it was like I think it was still, it was like GPT-3, I think. It's before 3.5. So it was like relatively early on. Maybe it was even longer than 2 years ago, but people couldn't date it back there. And then I remember, I thought the prompting and the kind of like AI stuff was going to be tricky, but like I found as someone that had done like a lot of like mobile development, largely like very basic like back-endy stuff, I found it pretty tricky to actually do the video processing. So like clipping things up and stuff like that. And I looked at different solutions, but most of them were like targeted towards like video hosting rather than like the actual processing. And so the recommended solution was like Lambda. And I set it up and, set up like an FFmpeg image with Lambda and stuff like that. And it was like one of those times where like I was just going through like the Stack Overflow, like answers on how to do this. And it felt like quite janky with the Lambda stuff. And some people were saying like use EC2. I tried that as well. And I was just hoping for this like real like easy answer or like this tool that would be like really good for it. And I just never really came across it. And it was like one of the first times I've had that where it was like, there are a lot of people asking for this and it's not that easy. So I was like, I feel like this could actually be a real interesting space if we could just like run FFmpeg really easily and be able to do video processing easily. And so I played around with it with a friend, and we started working on something. That didn't pan out, so I kind of dropped it for a little bit. Just like, and get into this stuff as well, but just like it just wasn't a good working relationship between us. And then about 2 months later, it was just still simmering away in my head. I had like a friend reach out that was like looking, like he was this really young guy, like amazing developer, and he was looking for some sort of work stuff. He just moved to UK, and like I was like, oh, like he wasn't really doing anything. So I was like, okay, why don't you just help me like one day a week? Like I'll pay you to help me like on this project. And we made like really good progress with it. And he, to this day, like amazing engineer, especially for how young he is. I think he was like 19 at the time. And so we launched it. We launched this thing, and maybe I can get into like how we did it, but for now I'll just say like it actually did like quite well for like compared to anything else I've done. So it got onto like front page on Hacker News, and the project was called like open source FFmpeg API. So just like for people wondering what the hell does that mean, it just means like obviously FFmpeg you could say is an API, but like already, but like we just added like Fastify server plus like database and queues and stuff. So
but it's easy to run it locally.
Yeah,
and then it's incredibly annoying to run it like on the cloud as a service. Hence the people who do the whole end-to-end thing. But if you just want specific commands, it's like, oh, I've got a Mac Studio at home, doesn't scale. What next? It's actually a really annoying problem.
Yeah, and
also I just want to say that if you use the words open source, FFmpeg, and API, it's like Catnip for Hacker News. So very solid title.
Yeah. That's exactly. Because I think a lot of people like, they're like, oh, that's a great idea. Like I'm always like editing videos at home, and I'm like, and it's like, it's not really for you. It's for like, if you want to watermark every video that a user uploads, or like you want to clip every video a user uploads, something like that. So anyway, so we we put it on Reddit and stuff like that. I can get into that later of what went well. Some of that did go well. And then someone posted on Hacker News, it went really well. And then we did have like a paid plan. And this whole thing was just like running on Laravel, like we had like a Laravel application plus this like Node.js like actual processing thing. And it was all running just on a Hetzner server, which again, we get into later on like things to do and not to do. So yeah, we got like, I think like quite early on, it got like a paying customer, which was like crazy to me. It was like, I think it was the first time I'd ever got like an actual SaaS paying customer for a thing that I'd built. And so that was really cool. And then again, we can get into more detail on this, but it didn't really work out with me and my friend that I was building it with for kind of a complicated reason. We could talk about it because probably like some lessons there in a general sense. Then it became just me, and I kind of stopped pushing it for a little bit, but people kept on signing up, kept on paying for it. And then one day someone signed up, and I kind of like had this just like running. I'd get like notifications sometimes, but someone signed up, and I started to get like all these like started to get messages like that it was like not really working. So basically I looked at it, and the person that signed up was like running like a lot of videos through this, and it was just a single server and like a single machine on Hetzner, and basically the queue wasn't emptying. So it just the queue's not empty. So I told this guy I'm gonna look into it, and then kind of quickly realized like in the time frame that like you're running a startup, like in the time frame we've got here, like you probably just need to use something else because, or like self-host it, because it's not going to get solved fast enough. Especially because my friend had set up a lot of the infrastructure stuff. I hadn't done that, so I closed signups. I think I closed that maybe slightly later, but which maybe I should have done immediately in hindsight. But I closed it relatively soon after, and no one else had this problem, but I should have just closed it, I think, immediately at that point. And then I started to think, okay, so how do I get this so like it actually works scalable? And again, and dive into this a bit later, but the long story is, and this is kind of where I kind of lost a bit of momentum. I first tried to get someone to like help me do it, to like shift it over. And that was just like, it's quite hard to hire like infrastructure people, especially like if you're just running this in your spare time, and like, I can't be paying people like,
as a funded founder whose entire like remit is to hire those people, it's still difficult. So yeah, to do it as like part-time, it's very difficult.
Scaling DevTools is sponsored by WorkOS. If things start going well, some of your customers are going to start asking for enterprise features. Things like audit trails, SSO, skim provisioning, role-based access control. These things are hard to build, and you could get stuck spending all your time doing that instead of actually making a great dev tool. That's why WorkOS exists. They help you with all of those enterprise features, and they're trusted by OpenAI, Vercel, and Perplexity. And for user management, the first 1 million monthly active users are completely free. Let's hear from Utpal from Digger.dev, a dev tool using WorkOS.
How it's designed is that you can start as early as day zero. But for us, it wasn't day zero. It was closer to when we first started monetizing, because we didn't have a sign up at all. People could just anonymously use our tool. So it was a little later. It coincided with when we wanted to start monetizing, and like we needed a nice enterprise feature set. If you're open source and you're doing enterprise first, the minute you think about monetization is when you should think about WorkOS. To be honest, if we do that again, I think I would think about that on day zero, to be honest, because like we should have done it on day zero, ideally. Anonymous usage should be permitted, but you should know who's using your tool. It should be optional, 100%. It should be opt-in, 100%. But it'd be great to have auth from day zero. You don't necessarily think about these enterprise features, but they still lead to revenue. And it kind of is a no-brainer in that sense. So yeah, I highly recommend.
It would just like, it would just be like perpetually 90% done, and there's always like a reason why we can't actually do it and stuff. And so in the end I was like, okay, that's not working. I'm just going to learn how to do it myself, probably another mistake, I would say, or not kind of a mistake, because it just took me ages. And in the end, I set up this whole like Terraform script so I could just scale up the number of machines. But what I realized was that it's also just being able to like adapt, like be able to see what's going on and stuff just became like much harder as I did that. And just like all the other things that went around that, just because I could provision a new machine, didn't like kind of just kick the can down the road, which maybe was okay. But like, I think with video, it just happens so fast because it's just like so heavy, as you know, and we're going to get on to, yeah. And so in the end, I moved it to Railway, and I think that was definitely a better option because it just like, then it's like they're doing a lot of the observability, a lot of the scaling, but still I think like you've still got to look at it and monitor it. But if I'd have done that first, then this was over the space of like months because it was just like alongside scaling DevTools and stuff. So recently the FFmpeg Fluent FFmpeg package was like deprecated, that it was like built kind of on, and it just like I'd been so slow with this, I felt like it's just time to like wrap it up. And then that's when I reached out to you. It still has some users, some paying customers. Otherwise I'm just gonna like probably close this thing down. Like, what is there something that's like can it kind of transition under the
is there literally any better option? It's kind of the framing.
No, but
so, for context, like during those rough times, we met at a DevTool startup.
Yes.
DevTool meetup. And you're like, oh, are we friends or are we rivals? Because we do something fairly similar.
Yeah.
And
you were like, no, we're best friends.
We're best friends because it's such a like strange niche thing to do. And actually, like our customers come from, they've typically tried to do it themselves because it feels like it's not that complicated.
Yeah.
And then at varying degrees of stubbornness of like how far do you get before you just like give up and look to buy a solution. Yeah. But you'd gotten much further than most people do, which I'm like, that's awesome. Like I really like it. And we would have some late night phone calls like almost like commiserating over
we did actually,
what the heck is going on here.
Yeah.
And the reason video is just so difficult because it's 5 orders of magnitude bigger than your typical kind of text streaming type thing. It's just maxes out memory really quickly, especially in serverless environments. There's like memory limits, and videos can easily they can easily sort of smash through those. So kind of built this relationship up, I guess, of we kind of mutually understand the problem, even though we're kind of going after some of the same use cases, etc. So it was it was a shame to hear that you were kind of closing down, but also I'm like, okay, cool. Like you've definitely got some users who would transition. I think that's difficult when you've seen lots of acquisitions, right? And we'll come to what this means by acquisition because it's a very broad spectrum, but it's kind of like, okay, are those users going to like carry on? Is it just going to be the same company, but now it's owned by an umbrella company or whatever? For me, when we were talking, it felt like StreamPot's users were kind of our ICP really. And like at whatever volume they're at, we're in a position where the more people who are doing cool stuff with, especially video processing, like the better from our perspective. But if we hadn't built that relationship up of, I'd say like mutual respect somewhat, just understanding the problems.
Yeah.
Not always necessarily even solving them, but just trust. It was there's so few people doing this. Like there's not, and it's not even like a secret. I think the moat is running all of this infrastructure and hiring those infrastructure engineers is really annoying and takes a long time. You can't sort of get Claude to spit out what to do there. It's not really the code so much, even the package that you talked about. So you called up and I was like, I think there's some better option than just closing it down. Can I, before we get to that point, I think that's a good place to, tender hooks of what does an acquisition look like, but I have to go backwards and talk about the, I guess, co-founder or like the early relationship aspect. You said there were some mistakes made there. What do you think those mistakes were?
So, I mean, if I'm not going to say his name just because in case, I don't know if he wants to be out there. But anyway, if anyone wants to get in touch with him, he's seriously a brilliant engineer. But And if he is listening, then like I have nothing but respect for him, to be clear, and like he's an amazing guy, and definitely hold all the fault with me. But I think it was just not. I think what happened was we were just very different. So, I mean, big age gap for one thing, just like different experience stuff, different skill sets, which I think usually is good. And that was definitely a good pro, was that, you know, to be fair, like he was a far better engineer than I am at 19. He is really, really, really good. And I think that there was at first, you know, I think he is like kind of wanted to be a founder, and it started out as like I was paying him as like a kind of contractor, and I saw it, and then I think there was kind of a mismatch in like expectations on like at some point when you said he wanted to be a founder, and I said, okay, we can do it as co-founders, and there was kind of like a mismatch of like expectations of what being a founder was, and I think like what I was expecting that relationship was going to be was different to what he was expecting, and it just wasn't working. And so I kind of was like, okay, this doesn't work. And then what happens, I think sometimes if you do that, then you kill what was working, and it could have worked out as it was before, maybe. And so I think the lesson is like, I honestly, maybe I don't actually know what the lesson is here, to be honest. It's just like, I think it's just really hard to find co-founders because there's just so many like dimensions to it of like skill set, like just like, do you get on, like life stages, what you're looking for, like principles, like it's just so hard to, like what area you're interested in, what you want to build, like.
And co-founder is such a weighty title. It's kind of a one-way ratchet.
Yeah,
you can't demote from co-founder.
Well, I don't know can you ever really demote someone in a sense? Like it's really hard. I feel like even if they're an employee, I would imagine it's like.
I've had experiences where people have said, you know what, I'm actually not like the right person for that next level up. Like you can hire somebody like above them in a way,
but they demoted themselves.
Kind of, yeah. And it's not when there's like only two people that it's more awkward, of course, yeah. But that being careful about deciding on it's actually a founder relationship, because I think the way you described starting off with it can be ideal, which is we've not worked together before, start as kind of a contractor type relationship and maybe graduate up to it. Maybe just going a bit too fast. That was like a non-reversible decision. Yeah. Maybe it was a bit too fast, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe I was a bit rash on it because I was like, you know, because I think I felt that the relationship would change if it became co-founder, and then
how much do you think the podcast influenced, where you've obviously spoken to a bunch of founders, sub-solo founders, but I guess probably slightly more weighted towards people who are a founding team. Do you feel like having done this number of episodes now, that influences how you're thinking about working on your own product? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. For like, especially on, I mean, for instance, for like co-founders, I don't think so, because I think that's just a very like, I mean, I think that's probably you learn more just from like hanging out with your friends and like just like, I don't know, being in a team or something, and like who you like working with and stuff like that. But yeah, like marketing, how to like talk about your products, like launching it.
Because you mentioned that went quite well to start off with.
That went well.
Definitely took some lessons there, and it was applied, and it seemed to be effective.
Yeah.
And then you hinted to come back to probably some things you may change if you could go back again.
Yeah.
Like, what were you hinting at there around the kind of marketing growth story?
Yeah. So, I mean, actually, I don't think, like, I think we didn't make that many mistakes on the marketing growth just because we didn't do that many, things. It's just like, I feel like the first thing we did was basically the main thing that we did, which was just, and that worked. And then it was all from then on, it was just like, we just didn't really do any more marketing. Because we just had this because of what?
Top tip, it turns out marketing is like kind of useful.
Yeah.
Like people will come to your website if you talk about it.
Yeah.
And they won't if you don't. Controversial.
Well, no, I was saying like people kept coming. No, it was kind of like almost like the opposite. It was like the marketing, when we just like, I think got lucky. The first method we tried worked quite well.
So it had so much momentum. It was
and then
just
it was just like, then people kept coming just from that first initial kind of like launch through like the articles and
so
stuff.
You were
like
being overwhelmed by that even without having to do
exactly.
more.
It was like, that was the thing, was just like, it was completely a technical cock up. I would say most of the things I did wrong was just like technical stuff, which is like kind of backwards to what most people say of like, but
this is where, and talking own book, so caveat, but this is where I think video is like genuinely different though. You're not possible to do a kind of, crappy MVP. Like the minimum viable part of it is still has to be quite well engineered. It's difficult. Yeah, like technical challenges like bottlenecks and things like that can flare up quite quickly. So you mentioned the architecture was set up by somebody else and you kind of inherited it.
Yeah.
Is that something that if you were setting up on your own, you maybe would have made different choices?
Yeah, I think I would have. It's hard because I think they were good choices if he'd been staying around and like running it in some ways. But I think maybe we should have just at least thought about like, okay, what happened? Well, I think the main thing was just, I think if he'd build it, like if you build the code, like if you write the code, like it's kind of easier to like come and the architecture. But I think once you've got a live system, people are using it, and then you're trying to learn how this thing is set up and like how the infrastructure was running. And for someone that had like primarily just like stuck stuff on like DigitalOcean and just like never had any issues with scale, that was like a big learning curve. And so I think the main thing would have just been like knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the team and thinking like, okay, if this person leaves, are you going to be able to like maintain this? And then also like, I feel like just the bar, as you said, like the bar for video is just like so high that like being honest with yourself, like it, I mean, so many dev tools have issues with like uptime, even though they've got like lots of funding and they're not doing video. They're doing, like things that probably still like very intense and they get a lot of users and stuff. But I think it's just like, it is actually quite hard. I don't know, like not for like some people listening, like, no, it's easy, but like, I don't know.
Yeah, but that's the great thing about being a dev, right? You start things because you thought it would be easy, and you just don't give up.
Yeah,
it's fair.
Yeah,
you're like
except I did give up.
Trolling. That's exactly it.
But I knew when to quit.
Yeah,
but like
trolling through Stack Overflow answers though, it like doesn't really resolve it. It's different than I've got use effect. How does that work?
Yeah,
1 billion blog posts.
Yeah,
then you get like slightly more niche about maybe how to set up a Hetzner server. But it's still quite like generic. So there's like hundreds or thousands of posts. You get into the real weeds of video encoding. And, we had to hire a specialist who's like on the FFmpeg team at one point because there was it's possible, it turns out in video for like there's not like a guaranteed number of frames in like a chunk necessarily. There's like variable frame rates. Even within that, it's called like a group of pictures. Not always the same number of group of pictures. That sounds like it's going to be the same number every time, right? Turns out not. And like there's just endless, literally endless.
Which I guess generally maybe you don't notice, but when you start doing it at scale, it's like it happens.
Yeah, it's shocking like how often edge cases crop up as soon as you add any kind of scale. It is like again and again and again. And I can just say for us, we've also spent 2 years, building a product that's now robust. But during that time, like we've had just hell weeks where the entire pipeline's blocked, like you said, by one file. Just you unpack it and it explodes and like uses like the entire memory of the whole system. It's just random things like that.
Yeah, and
it's not malicious users. They've just uploaded like an iPhone video. They've chosen some obscure settings in their iPhone menu.
Oh yeah. I mean, even if you just tap the thing in the top right and make it, whatever it is, Ultra HD. Yeah, an hour of video is going over 100 gigs, right?
Oh yeah,
and then,
insane sizes. We had one user via a customer who was just uploading stuff in like ProRes, and like I guarantee they don't know what ProRes is.
Yeah.
It's basically it's not quite uncompressed, but it's like this really, really high resolution, high bitrate format. And then they were like not sure why the like storage bill was so high, and had to like explain to sort of not video experts. They're just trying to build like a chat app basically.
Yeah, you do not.
Yeah, they don't know what ProRes is. It's like you don't even know what you don't know.
Yeah,
and it's only by being basically a dork about this whole thing for like a decade that you start to feel like you maybe know some of this stuff.
Yeah,
but I still get surprised at least once a month by something I've literally never seen before. So effectively, you just unknowingly opened up that door for yourself.
Yeah, which is fun, and it's I love. I don't want to leave the media space. It's incredibly fun, and it feels a lot more like unexplored in a sense compared to. I think people know how to build like CRUD apps and stuff like pretty well, and it feels like even with like the AI stuff, there's always like the chat stuff. And then the voice stuff is like kind of, and like images and video is like always like a few steps behind, I think, because of...
There's layers of complexity.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question about, because you mentioned about hiring is difficult and you were doing everything on your own, and aside from having other things. The solution to that for a lot of early stage teams is to raise some money and to build a team to then, even pre-product, if you've got, you can have a compelling pitch, you can still raise some money. Yeah. You've got good connections, like in the space, I think people probably would fund you as an individual. Did that cross your mind at any point?
It did a little bit when I was like, so as I mentioned, like my friend is an incredible developer. And I think when things were going well there, it definitely did, because I felt like, okay, this guy has potential to be like one of the best engineers in the world, like definitely. And so on the basis of that, and I felt like, I could be like one of the best at the go-to-market side of things in DevTools. So between us, like, and it's a big, important problem, and we could build like a huge business. But then when that kind of didn't work out, then I was like, I don't think this is such a technical area. I think that this needs to be built by someone like who's like very focused on that for me. And it just didn't feel like I like working with other people as well. I don't think I'm like, I can found my own like bootstrapped business, I'd say, but like to do VC backed business, I think I would like to work as in a team. And so it wasn't a strong like thing that I considered. Maybe another time, another business, something that I felt like had to absolutely have to be in the world. Otherwise, like, and then maybe I would if I felt like that was the way to do it. But yeah, I think that unless you're trying to build not just $1 billion company, but like many more multiples of that, like I feel like VC doesn't seem to be the way to go, because I just like a lot of the time people, I mean, I think if you sell for $1 billion, you're going to make a lot of money, but like if you sell for like a lot less than that, sometimes people make a lot of money, sometimes they don't, because based on how much they've raised and stuff, and it just seems like it's probably a bit easier to just like bootstrap it. I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't seriously, I guess, is the way to answer that, but maybe I should have. I don't know.
I think you've hinted there though at what your motivation sort of is and was. It is not necessarily to build that massive organization that's, and go to that scale. Like there's somewhere in between that's an amazing outcome, but it's not returning the fund for like a major VC firm, right? There's a pretty big spectrum, and there's a lot of steps along the way there.
Yeah.
And if your motivation isn't to go and build that like enormous company, it's probably not the right choice anyway.
Yeah, I guess maybe the exception, I can imagine myself. I don't really have a desire to be like to be like a billionaire. Like I don't. That's never been something that I've really particularly cared about. The only exception maybe would be like if there was something I really wanted to build, and I just felt like we needed a lot of money to do it. Otherwise, it just wasn't going to be possible. And then I'm sure I would do it. But yeah.
So I have to ask about the outcome.
Yeah.
Here.
Maybe we can be transparent on it.
I don't mind that at all. But you're currently writing massive angel checks into all the new London founders, right? Is that kind of acquisition?
We're giving them ittybit stock as they're writing it.
It will be worth a lot of money, to be fair. But so we spoke about what our options are.
Yeah.
We, as a company, ittybit, we could definitely get some value from the user base, I think. And transparently, your advice, like we've already been tapping you up for free anyway, through that relationship. Now there's like no, you can wear a hoodie, for example, without feeling like you're advertising a competitor, essentially, these things. But it was definitely user base is like somewhat useful. It's not enormous, but it's the right kind of profile for us. And I felt like it definitely would be worth having those people come over, would help us out if we can. And then there's some interesting technology there. It's not super robust or anything like that, but there's lessons there. We're constantly trying to solve similar problems, the exact same problems, in fact. So that was an aspect of it. But a big deal for me, obviously, is we've built that relationship up with yourself. We're not great at go-to-market, like we're improving, but we've been very technical and focused on product for too long. Like we're at the next stage of our journey. She's like adding users. Here on a plate is a bunch of users, right? Like sort of thing. And then, 50% of our ideas for marketing come from like this podcast anyway. So we may as well like get Jack involved formally. I think was probably part of the part of the mindset. So do you want to talk about kind of what we've agreed?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I think we were just like dancing around. Maybe we'd just talk about what actually happened, because maybe it's interesting to people. Of just like, I think I was like literally like drafting like shut down emails, and then I was like, I should probably actually just like text Paul and just say like, what
just to
like say like, and then just seeing like if you'd, like if I tell you and then like if you were like, oh, maybe we could do something, like we should talk. And then, so I WhatsApped you, and then I think we got on a call the same evening, right?
It's like I had a customer call, and I kind of like, I mean, as important as that is, I kind of really was like, oh, I don't want to do this now. I want to like really try to find out what's going on, like what's the tea?
That's the drama.
What's the drama? But so it was about probably an hour later or something. Yeah, same evening.
Yeah, very soon. And then I think I just sent you, I think we had 5 or 6 people paying like $20 or $60. I think one person paying 20, and then 5 paying 60. And some of these are like active, some of them are like lapsed. And like 350-ish like users, like signed up users, plus a wait list of like, I can't remember what it was, like 200 people that had signed up on the wait list since I closed it down. And then plus like we were still getting like maybe like 40 people, I think 30 or 40 people joining like this month on the wait list, which I actually feel like is probably the most valuable part of it, because like new people coming in.
From our is people with the need and the active intent, like they've not just been to the website, but they've like opted into, this seems like it solves my problem. And we solve the same problem essentially.
Yeah. So they could just
amongst a few other things, like that's kind of our core market, is people who need to do a lot of video encoding like in the cloud, but are like fussy enough to want to like choose their own settings and to kind of have dev level of control over it. So I feel like it's a really perfect like slice of people who need that same exact thing, and it's relatively recent. We have tons of people from our waitlist from like 2 years ago that like just never respond to anything. It's like, that's dead. Like it definitely has like a half-life of usefulness, but the fact it's still getting active traffic was the main thing from our perspective.
Yeah, I feel like that's the most valuable.
And just transparently, in terms of value, on a similar level to like if we sponsored a podcast or a YouTuber or like a creator, it's kind of roughly what we'd expect to get in terms of traffic from a similar kind of spend, I think. And being a bit more generous because, we're friends.
So I think I think we danced around it. Probably we're still dancing around even saying it on the podcast, but I think we danced around it for a bit, and then I think you suggested £20,000. So it's like dollars, probably like $25,000 of stock options in ittybit, which people can write in and tell us whether that was people can write in and give their opinion on like whether this is undervalued or overvalued on. So
yeah, I'd be curious to see what people think about that.
Yeah, but I feel to me that seems like very good, very fair, and very and as I said, this was something that was gonna be shut down. And actually, I think this is the point to say to people, because I think David Kramer actually made this point, but it was like kind of in a different way. But like, if you're just going to shut it down, like try to maybe reach out. I know the bigger point is probably like, you should actually build relationships with people that might someday like acquire you, or like in your competitors. They might be your competitors now, but maybe they'll buy you, or like maybe you'll buy them. And if you're like kind of had a very adversarial relationship, like it seems like maybe that's not always a good thing. Because I had this before where like I almost sold my last company, and in the end it didn't come through, but they were a competitor, and we kind of built a relationship with them. And definitely if we had have just been random people messaging them, or like we were adversarial, then that conversation isn't even going to happen, or maybe they're going to screw you over. Yeah. But
because if you're truly competitors, then you've got actually the same user base, that like by definition, right? And it's like whatever volume that's at. I've never met a founder who doesn't want more of their kind of perfect ideal customer, like to come and check out their product. It's obviously there's got to be some value there. If you're, like I said, adversarial, but some people are just, as a marketing strategy, like aggressive, right? Like online, this is on Twitter all the time, stuff like that. It's like, can you see through that and it's just marketing?
Yeah.
Like generally speaking, I don't know. Is that the kind of user you want to attract? Like just, there's too much drama in the world already.
So you're saying you're not a fan of like the kind of drama-based marketing?
It definitely can work.
Yeah.
I think it alienates more people than it attracts. Or do you specifically want to attract the users who are like, up on the drama?
Yeah.
Or do you just want like chill people who have no time for that because they're just building a cool product?
Yeah.
And most things are not direct substitutes.
Yeah.
So my general approach is to be pretty enthusiastic about competitors. We have customer calls quite often where we're not a great fit, and there's similar adjacent services that are a better fit. Why not recommend it? Because that person's going to churn anyway, probably. And if we're truly not differentiated and we're just doing the exact same thing as another company, like why do we exist? What's the point? Like we have an opinion. We have, the way we design our API, for example, or the way that we like talk to customers, the way that we handle invoicing is all with an opinion. And that resonates with some people and it just doesn't resonate with other people. We're gambling that there's enough people in the world who resonate with our ways of things that build a big business, but it just feels disingenuous to say like, no, there's no other alternatives. You have to use our thing. Yeah. It's not true. And I think the one thing you've got is like, can you be authentic and trustworthy? If I say that a competitor is actually really solid, I think it builds more trust and potentially we get more customers because we're pretty upfront by that. You talk to a lot of developers, like marketers, and you'll hear again and again, developers kind of allergic to like traditional marketing, right? Like you book a call with a salesperson and they're going to like ramroad you with like a 15-minute presentation. It's like, oh no, I'm just not interested. Yeah. That's not how to sell. Most of our customers will have researched, we're a smaller player at the moment. They would have researched 2 or 3 alternatives. So we're not having to like educate the market on our competitors. We might have to talk about where we're different, but that should be honest. Yeah. If we just have a chart where it's like all the green ticks.
Oh my God. That's the worst thing you could ever do, I feel like.
It's just, it's inauthentic. Yeah. And it doesn't work very well. So building the relationships is like really important, but also getting a sense for like who's our ideal customer and who's maybe a competitor's ideal customer. Yeah. Because eventually you're going to go to conferences, you're going to go to events, you're going to bump into these people. And it's like, you've got much more in common than
you're both like
almost anybody.
You could have been building this together.
Absolutely.
Or you could have been co-founders with each other if you'd have been in different space and time. Right?
Yeah. So it makes sense, I think, to build those relationships more so than to like attack them. And if you're building in a space that's so small that it's truly like, zero sum, you're probably not going to build a big business anyway. Like it has to be like a really big market that's growing really quickly.
Yeah.
There's far more people coming in to like, for us, like multimodal kind of video hosting stuff.
Yeah.
Than we could possibly service.
Yeah.
And spread across all our customers.
Yeah.
Like there's still going to be increasing demand for the next, I think, 5 years.
Yeah.
Until AGI shuts everything down.
Well, hopefully
But your stock
you'll
will be worth a lot of money before then.
Yeah.
Is the main point.
Good. Yeah. I'm banking on it.
So can I ask you what's next?
Yeah. So I think, well, I am thinking about doing a job as well as scaling DevTools and pushing it forward from like, because I feel like scaling DevTools is valuable if I understand what questions to ask, and that comes from like doing the thing rather than just like reading about it. And so I learned a lot doing this, but I also think I have a lot of gaps on like, as DevTools are growing, what things matter more than. I think I've asked a lot of questions about the very earliest stages, but I think I would like to be able to like ask a lot more questions from my own problems, challenges that are like based on the things that I've experienced. So I think I'm going to do that, and like I think it'll make the show better, to be honest, because I don't know, people can write in and tell me differently, but like I feel like the quick cuts and like clever edits probably stuff is like less important than just like me asking like good questions, actually like being like scaling a dev tool myself.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
but
the way I've always seen it.
if you're like 0 to 1 for too long, there's so many different, more interesting topics beyond that you just go join a company that's gone from 30 people to 300 people in a year.
Yeah.
That's a different set of challenges.
Yeah.
But you don't know what those questions are if you've not experienced it.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And even like a lot of the stuff that I was a bit quite naive about until I started StreamPot, because like a lot of the stuff like how do you do like quality, I don't know, like I just didn't really understand how difficult it is to just stay on top of like, if you've got like an open source project and a SaaS, just like manage those two things, or like staying on top of like GitHub issues, or like deciding what features to build and stuff. I could like, maybe I would hear those things and say, okay, I hear like that's important. But like, I think it's different when you actually experience it and you're like, this is actually really hard. Yeah. And like, you could actually get, you could probably be like the best company in the whole DevTool space by doing stuff that's like nothing original, in like just doing things like really well, for instance, in most areas, I feel like, because it's just so hard to do the basics really well.
Yeah. It's so hard to identify patterns amongst the products that really break out, right? It's there's so many useful, like I said, free open source pieces of software that even are very popular, but they don't break out into big companies.
Yeah.
It's a kind of different thing.
Yeah.
And of course, some of it is like founder mentality, founder goals, like what are they aiming for? There's a lot of founders who would like to do that thing who don't. Yeah. And I think one of the things that this podcast is really good at is unpicking somewhat like the founder psychology, or the like how do they think about decisions? And that does like scale up. It's like these different frameworks and things like that, which is pretty cool. But if you don't know what the next step is, so it's like useful for me, as a founder we've raised a pre-seed round, we're growing at this point. We want to get to that next level of like Series A, Series B, beyond.
Yeah.
You can talk to other founders, but to listen to like, I don't know how many of you've interviewed, 100 people probably, something like that.
Yeah.
It's over 100 episodes, and you've done some
repeats.
guests of repeats.
Yeah.
We'll say that. Yeah.
Over 100, yeah.
It's useful.
Yeah.
But you don't want to just be repeating, retreading the same ground.
No.
Over and over again.
No.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. You got to make it fun for yourself, right? This podcast is for me. Like in many ways I am the audience. I just ask questions that I'm interested in. And so I need to keep finding new things that I want to get answers to, rather than like, because I sometimes like, it's like, you feel like all the stuff. You just need to do it. So I need to do more stuff. so that I have more questions. Because right now I feel like I just know, and not that I know everything, but like I know enough. I just like need to do it because there's difference between what you hear here. Unfortunately, I wish you could just like learn it all from a podcast. But
Yeah. The academic aspect of it as well. Like there's so much bad advice. I want to sort of say as a founder, you should ignore like pretty much everything that you hear from like people who are not founders. And that includes like probably your investors or like customers can have good opinions, but they definitely don't understand like the full picture, etc. There's really something unique about hearing from a bunch of other founders who have had to make the same, because there's always trade-offs. Like it's a simple decision. If there's only one good option, well, cool, everyone can make that decision. That's very rarely the case. There's almost always trade-offs and hard decisions, and you sometimes have to shield your team from them. So it's like that comes to like back to the sort of co-founder question a little bit, like who can you bounce that off a little bit. So other founders who've like really gone, and then you get into the weeds and I ask like tactical questions and quite like,
how do you do like a news post or something?
Yeah. To be fair though, if it was the tail out well, he's just like he looks at every PR personally, despite sort of Laravel Cloud's like scaling like crazy. I think I would have just stopped the podcast there and just kept asking how over and over again. That seems like baffling. So that's inspirational. Like, from okay, every investor was like, you shouldn't be working in the code. You should be like, build the company, not the product. And like, was like, then your product ends up being a bit shit, and it should be that's like really good.
Yeah, it's very hard. I think there's like there are like just like these giant figures that are like just really good. Engineers. And
they reject like those like heuristics that you'll read about in Twitter threads or something. They're like, no, this bullshit. You need to like look at every PR or something. It's like it's cool that most founders are just basically stubborn. Or certainly opinionated. Like have a good vision. And there's not a way to get hold of that. Like conference talks aren't really the same thing as like digging deep, and you can't ask a follow-up question for a conference talk and things like that. So I'm just glazing you at this point, but I'm like, come on, man, keep doing the podcast.
Don't worry, it's not going to stop. It's going to keep going. We're coming towards the end actually. So maybe we could just do we got some takeaways, like lessons. What can people learn? Or maybe you can sum it up on what do you think people can learn from the StreamPot experience?
Personally, I think you should have raised money. Once you started to learn about like the technical challenges of it, there's some, and we could have a whole episode on like what makes a really good bootstrapped business. We've got like mutual friends here in London who've like grown insanely good bootstrap businesses. That's like a world that I have a lot of time for, but I chose to raise money for ittybit because we knew the technical challenge was just, we had to spend a lot of money on basically product and infrastructure ahead of being able to solve the problem. So I guess to generalize it away from StreamPot, it's just make a decision. Are you building a really technical product? You might need to hire more than one engineer, and if you're in the fortunate position to be able to self-fund that, then great. But most people probably have to raise at least a small amount of money there. I don't think it necessarily locks you into the $1 billion outcome if it's like accelerator money or pre-seed money. Like there's definitely angel investors who are happy for 5x, 10x return. And obviously if you've taken less money, the 10x is a reasonable, an achievable sum. So maybe there's a lesson for people who are currently not raising money, but maybe they should. That's the rarity. I think most founders probably shouldn't, especially you can get so far so fast now. But I used to be very like bootstrapper. I think having seen both sides now, there's definitely reasons where like raising money would make sense. I think that would have helped you along the way to some extent. The one-way decisions versus like reversible decisions with the founder, I think that's really interesting. I'm thinking about loads of things I've done, like, oh no, can I roll that back if it was a mistake? Like, it's definitely something you just have to commit, right? You have to like decide and make, without all the perfect information. But some decisions need more time than others, I would say.
That was one.
Yeah, there's one. Because it feels like it wouldn't have damaged the relationship for you to push that out by 3 months or 6 months, right?
No. Just see what happens.
Yeah. And be friendly with competitors, I guess, is the main one.
Yeah. I think that's good. I think that's very fair. Perhaps I should have raised money. But we will never know. Maybe there's a parallel timeline that we're filming this in my Rolls Royce or something.
That would be a very nice way to do a follow-up episode. So I look forward to that.
Very
one,
tacky as well.
Oh yeah, too right. Self-driving Rolls Royce around London. Perfect.
Okay, where can people learn more about ittybit? Which now I've got some skin in the game on ittybit, so people should go.
For follow-up point, yeah, marketing is good. It turns out, and we should do more of it. So,
yeah.
Honestly, ittybit.com is, I think, a decent summary of what we offer. If people have an upload form on their website, I would love to chat to them and kind of learn about, what comes in there and how we can make that more efficient. But we have settled into the tagline of just automating all the boring media stuff. It is a rabbit hole. It's one that we've, jumped into willingly, and we really think it's fun. But almost no teams should be doing most of this stuff themselves. It's a little bit of a tar pit for money and time, and it's catnip to engineers because it is like the idea of like being nerd sniped. Yeah, it's really novel, interesting problems. So if you have like a smart engineering team, they will convince you that they do need 6 months to build this stuff, and you probably don't. You should probably come check us out. I think is the better option.
Love from my experience. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Well, thank you, Paul. That was a very interesting episode. I hope, it was for me. It was fun. It's like therapy. I hope that people enjoyed it. Let us know.
So at worst, it was cathartic to you, but hopefully the listeners found it interesting as well.
Yeah, they're going to be like, this guy, Jack, is an idiot. I'm not going to listen to him anymore. What?
No, if they think that, they should write in.
Yeah, tell me.
I would love to hear all the other advice that they listening and were like screaming, just thinking, you should have done this, you should have done that. Yeah.
But actually, one thing I will say about, I do want to do a DevTool myself again, and I will probably join a job, but if people are interested in like brainstorming and stuff, then I'm very open to doing like hack days or something. So that would be a cool thing.
And you're on the job market. May as well finish with that.
Yeah.
Open to offers.
I think so. Yeah. Okay. Thanks everyone for listening, and thanks, Paul.